having American citizens placed on terrorist watch lists. How concerned is that? That should we be about that? And also, what would it take to be on a terrorist watch list? Coming to an event like this count?
Everybody get that question? Yeah. Okay, first off, in the early days, people were put on the watch list very easily. There were a bunch of contractors that did it. And apparently I said something on Fox one time that one of those contractors didn't like. And for about 3 years, I couldn't get on an airplane without special screening. So they've gotten around those kinds of things. And I think the terror watch list now, people whose names go on that list, is a pretty well-defined set of criteria to get your name on those lists. Should we be worried sometimes about having our names on a list like that? I hadn't thought about it. I don't know what a good answer for it is. I mean, do I think that my phone calls are sometimes being monitored? Yeah. Do I like it? No. But I'm kind of an in-your-face kind of guy. You know, you want to listen to my phone calls? Feel free. Whatever. I do think there's pretty careful criteria done. I don't think that they're randomly. Now, the IRS might be looking around. I don't think the government, other than that, is playing around with any of this. I don't think they want to get caught doing that. Why? So I think the criteria to get on the watch list is pretty good. Now, let me say, because that's such a good question, I am adamantly opposed against NSA spying on Americans in America. Our emails, our phones, they're lying to us. I absolutely believe they're lying. I think if they want to find a conversation you had 5 years ago with a friend, they can call it up. They say, no, all we have is a telephone number. I don't believe them. I might be wrong, but I don't believe them because I know what their capabilities are. I never take exception to the fact that I'm overseas that NSA is listening. I want them to be listening. Because I just said that the intelligence community is going to have a terrible job keeping up with these Americans and Europeans that are traveling around with the ISIS people. NSA is going to be our #1 ability to do that. It's capturing messages and stuff going around out there. Is that fair?
Yes, thanks, sir.
Thanks.
How important is the Second Amendment in America today?
That's a little bit outside my area of real expertise, but I got a whole bunch of guns, and I'm not worried about it. From where we are in North Carolina, we have a bunch of sheriffs down there that say under no circumstances are they going to go around and collect anybody's guns. Pardon?
We don't need to load right yet.
I don't think so, but I'll tell you what, I honestly believe it. I think once we see, if this government tried to do something, I think we would see this outcry from officials at the state level and lower, not the feds. I don't trust the feds at all. But I think we would see sheriffs all around this country standing up and saying, I'm not doing it, and I think that would cause feds to start backing off too and saying, okay, I'm not either. Because I don't think the feds
Obama will ever stand up to any country before he leaves?
I don't think it's in his DNA. I don't think it's in his DNA. You know what? I think Obama lives in 2 alternate universes. And I believe this. I believe he lives in the first universe is the one that requires him to make decisions, confront problems, tackle issues. He doesn't like that. And so he's in denial about it all the time. He's walking away from it. He's looking for somebody else. But you have to understand this. Against that backdrop, Obama goes to these fundraisers. Can you imagine the praise and adulation he gets from a room this big, full of wealthy donors who are clapping and cheering and making him feel like the most important man in the world? This is the problem we face. And so in those 2 universes, that's why he loves to go to that fundraising universe, because they really make him feel good. And he hates to go back to that Washington one where decisions, I think he's in fantasy land half the time, and the other half the time he's in denial. And I don't think he's going to stand up to anybody. I mean, he's being pushed right now just to do what he is. Some of you may have heard his press conference today. All he really talked about was getting a new government in Baghdad, about Maliki stepping down and a new prime minister. The State Department and the White House somehow think that the government in Baghdad, the problems there are sorted out, it's going to take care of ISIS. Maybe ISIS will come to the table. Maybe ISIS will come and sit down with the government in Baghdad and we'll talk this all out. That's how disconnected Obama and the White House and the State Department. They don't understand.
But I need to sit down.
Yeah.
There's just too much for any one of our minds to keep it all contained and to keep it all lined up in order, just on a daily basis. And I don't know which question. I have only about 2.5 hours. I don't think we can win elections. I've seen too much fraud. I'm out in the street asking people to come and take a piece of propaganda off me or give me a thumbs up for my idea or whatever every day. And my question is, more and more coming up on the internet daily, is this man a legitimate American? Is he a legitimate president? And I don't think so. That's my personal opinion.
You may be right. You may absolutely be right. And here's part of the issue. Is he legitimate? We don't know, and we may not know for another 100 years. But the problem is we're living in the real world right now. The real world is he was sworn in to be our president. And even if tomorrow somebody found a real legitimate birth certificate from somewhere else that said he couldn't be our president, the legal process to push that through and get him out would far exceed the rest of the time he has in office. That's the problem we face. So we're stuck with the guy. But here's the point that I like that you make me remember. That no matter what our complaints are about him, no matter what he does right or does wrong, mostly wrong, he's not running for office again. So at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, because we're going to be electing somebody else next time, and if we're not careful, it's going to be Hillary Clinton. And we're going to be right where we are now, except we do know she's an American.
Do you think there will be another vote?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Well, I think we're worried about this next election. I know I am. I'm here. I just want to ask you, do you see a Reagan out there anywhere?
I love your question. I tell you what I think. I think even if there is a Reagan out there, that the Republican Party is so fractured and so self-serving in so many corners that they're going to fight it all the way. I don't know. You know, we don't have. I mean, even Ronald Reagan had a hard time getting the nomination for the presidency. I wish
what
we had
leaders do you
somebody else.
respect? What military leaders out there or people out in that world do you respect that we can watch?
In the military world?
Well, yeah, our leaders and then the ones that may be running for election.
Well, you know,
What do you think?
again, I stay away from politics a little bit because I stand back and look at all these guys a little suspiciously. I'll say this just as an example. I like Mitt Romney a lot. I think Romney may run again. Is he the ideal candidate? No, but remember this. He's been thoroughly scrubbed by the media. They've taken their shots at that guy. And he passed. He passed muster. And we don't know that anybody else that comes along is going to be able to do that. We're going to have to go through all these battles again, no matter who the candidate is. So the media, who's our #1 enemy, will have a hard time working Romney over. Plus, you see what the polling is right now. 12% of the people who voted for Obama now wish they'd have voted for Romney.
Yes, and
So
he had that financial mind. And
He-
he was prepared for it. You know?
I think he'd be, honestly, I think he'd be a good leader. I think he would have been a much better leader than we have right now. But that doesn't mean he's going to get there because there's people, you know, in the Republican Party that are going to be opposed to him. And I think we're going to see a party fractured, and the Libertarians are going to create a lot of problems for us. I just moved from Virginia to North Carolina. We have a governor, a Democratic governor, as most of you probably know, in Virginia, who is there because the Libertarians decided they didn't like our candidate, Republican candidate, so they all ran off in another direction, split the vote, and now we got Terry McAuliffe. What a despicable human being, and you can quote me, he's a despicable human being.
Is that why they named him McAuliffe? Is that why they called him McAuliffe?
Yeah, it's terrible, and we did that to ourselves. We did it to ourselves, and I get worried about what's going to happen in the next election from that perspective. And when you look at the numbers that Hillary has right now, it's tough. Yes, sir.
First, I just wanted to thank you for your service.
My question is about Putin and the KGB, not necessarily about what's going on right now. I heard a lot of accounts of people that talk about the quote-unquote collapse of the Soviet Union back in the day. A lot of people who said that it was not a collapse, that it was more of a planned restructuring by the KGB. And that, and one guy actually had a really good point, said that the only person that was actually, the only entity that was actually saying that Russia lost the Cold War was Russia. And how curious is that? So I just wanted to get your thoughts on what actually went on. Was it actually a collapse, or was it something to throw the West off?
I mean, I hadn't heard that theory before, but I do believe that the Soviet Union legitimately collapsed for financial reasons. I do think that, and I was a Senate staffer during part of that time, and I've been in and out of Russia a number of times, both before the collapse and after the collapse. And you know, I think they just finally couldn't cover it anymore. For one thing, they couldn't maintain, they didn't have enough money to maintain their military might, and at the end of the day, Russia's real power wasn't an economic base, but their military power. Their military power was it. And people who were going over and looking at their ships were all rusted, their people weren't paid. And I think it just finally got to the point where they said, hey, you know, Brezhnev just said, we can't, Gorbachev just said, we can't do it anymore. It doesn't work. And I really do think that's the reason. And the way it fell apart now, Vladimir Putin, a survivor of the KGB, as many of his other KGB buddies, all did pretty good in those days. And that's why he's risen today. And you know, most Russians look back on those days, they forget the bad news. They want to remember the good days when Russia was a Soviet Union, it was a big deal, it was powerful. And they want to reflect back and see some of their returns. But, you know, people can argue. I mean, we talk about whether Putin's got enough strength or Russia has enough strength to do anything. Sometimes perception becomes reality. And he's got a lot of perception out there that looks pretty good. Reality may not be that good. The fact of the matter is people are stepping back. They're listening to him. He's doing things, and he's getting away with it. In part because our own country's not standing up and taking the lead like we should. I didn't quite answer your question, but I think the fall of the Soviet Union was a legitimate fall.
Yes, thank you.
Colonel, first of all, I want to thank you for your past and your present service.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you for being here tonight. I have a couple of things I've seen, and then I'll ask you a question. One of the things that I've noticed, they're supposed to be bringing humanitarian supplies to those folks on top of the mountain. And I noticed film footage from inside a helicopter. They were throwing plastic packages of plastic bottles out on the rocks from at least 20 or 30 foot in the air. And they're not going to survive. They had, Janine had a priest on say basically the other night that they're not getting those supplies, and when they get the water they have to lick it off the rocks. I don't know if you've had any reports or not, but it makes me wonder if this humanitarian deal isn't a put-up.
Well, I think we're trying to, I saw some of Judge Janine's show the other night, and I do think we have the best intentions of Vietnam vets. I was at Quezon during the siege. I always remember when we were totally surrounded and they couldn't get any supplies to us, they started dropping it by air. And the parachute, and half of what they dropped fell outside the lines, which means somebody else got it, not us. So as soon as they started talking about dropping stuff in by parachute to the refugees up there, I started thinking, okay, I wonder how much is actually going to get there. And so also the numbers that they were talking about, they dropped 5,000 gallons of water and 7,500 or 8,500 MREs. Well, my goodness, there were 50,000 people up there. So what's that going to do? And also, I threw in, I was real surprised that there wasn't there weren't more nations involved. I think at this point the Brits are doing it also, the Turks are doing it. I think we're trying to do what we can up there, and I think there's now been a passageway open thanks to some of the courage for a lot of those people to get down. But I think what's happening on that mountain is going to go on for a while. And you know, when you're coming in with the helicopter, if you got a good pilot, you can put a bird down almost anywhere. And those aren't heavily treed places over there. That terrain over there is rocky and craggly. I hope we're doing the best job we can because those people need it. They absolutely need it. There's a lot of them going to die. Little ones, old ones are going to die. It's a humanitarian crisis of the worst.
And I'll take just one more second. I'm not trying to hog all the time. One of the things that I've noticed.
I already hogged it.
with replenishment by helicopters, and I've had that when I was in the Navy. We had our ship replenished. That's why they make cargo nets. You don't just throw that stuff out the door.
Exactly, that's exactly right, precisely right.
Thank you for being here.
Yes, sir.
My question is a little bit more of a prediction. I predict that there's going to be a recession in the next couple of years, and because of what's happening in the Middle East and Europe, and maybe it doesn't want to happen, but could that help us turn political tide the other way if it does happen?
That's a great question. I don't know what the answer is to that, because we're talking about a few years out from now. You know, I'm more concerned here on the real short term of trying to get out of this recession that we're in right now.
I based my statement on some of the economists that have predicted everything. Their family does predicted everything from the Great Depression right up to the last recession.
Right.
Right. Thank you.
Lieutenant Cowan, Lieutenant Colonel Cowan, I'd like to thank you so much for coming. We had some written questions that we gave you, and you pretty well covered them in your presentation. There is one question that I would like to ask, and I think that what you have done here tonight has been a tremendous service to the people of this community, because when we don't know about something, we are very apprehensive and frightened about it, and if we can hear the truth, as bad as the truth may be, it kind of stops our mind from wandering at the absolute worst case. There are concerns among a lot of people in the country about a worst case situation where the president might use some excuse to declare martial law. My question to you is, do you have any feeling for, with the disregard that is shown to our Constitution, with the current administration and many in the Congress, do you have any feel for the attitude of the military and whether or not they would stand behind their constitutional oaths, or just consider the President Commander-in-Chief and do everything that...
What a great question. I don't know what the answer is. You heard me express my real fears about the current Joint Chiefs, about most of the general officers we have now in the military. I have to believe that. Frankly, I mean, a lot of things this president has made happen in the military, and I've been one of those service chiefs. I said, Mr. President, it's been a lot of fun, but I'll see. Not one of them has resigned. Not one of them. The core values, and a lot of those guys were actually contemporaries. Core values we all grew up with, they've forgotten all about them. I'm not sure. I don't think the American public would stand for it. I think there'd be an outright revolt from all corners, and that there would be elements of the military, people in the military, and certainly people in the federal government who would try to stand behind the government, but would, behind the president, but would be drowned out. Now, we're talking just 2 more years to have to worry about that. Do I think Hillary Clinton, were she president, has those same kinds of nefarious thoughts that he does? No, I don't think so. I don't think she's got that evil mind that he and those people around him have. May be wrong. But I don't know, Joe. I don't have a good answer for you. I'm not worried about it. I don't think it'll happen, but I live out in Mount Airy, North Carolina.
Do you think that ISIS as a present has the ability to coordinate an attack on U.S. soil, or will they ever have that ability?
Well, I mentioned that young guy who got trained by them and came back, spent a little time and went back over. He's an example of a guy who could have come back here and done something. I doubt that Al-Qaeda, just so most of you know, Al-Qaeda has got good connections to the drug cartels already. They've established relationships. So they have the ability, if they wanted to, either outright ability or ability to quickly construct the ability to move things into the United States. I mentioned shoulder-fired weapons, or explosives, or things like that. They can do it. I don't think ISIS has got a lot of Al-Qaeda people who just left Al-Qaeda to join them because they want to be part of this bigger, more powerful thing. It's reasonable to assume if ISIS wants to do something in the United States, they could do it in the short term. I think that they're more concerned right now about consolidating their gains, about continuing to organize, about continuing to bring people in. They still got a lot to do in Iraq to make sure they don't get pushed out, and I think that's where their focus will be. But at some point, maybe not in the not too distant future, ISIS is going to feel very comfortable about who they are and where they are. And they'll start looking at a bigger picture. And they will start thinking about something they can do in the United States to plant their flag, so to speak. Again, we are ISIS. We conducted that attack that brought down that airplane or blew up that bridge or something else. They want that kind of notoriety because once more, it's a great recruiting tool.
Yes, I'd like to thank you for all your service.
Yes, sir.
I filled out the form when I came in. I think it was number 4. It asked who I thought was the most dangerous enemy. And I do believe it's the news media you mentioned.
Yeah.
I don't think the Republican Party can ever win another election until they do something better.
There's not a day that goes by when I don't start yelling at my TV. I'm yelling at the newspaper. My Vietnam PTSD comes out full form when I think about it. I was surfing by ABC News the other night and heard him say something which was so outlandish, and then I remembered, you know, most of the American public is listening to ABC or watching ABC or NBC or CBS or reading those newspapers, and I couldn't agree more. I don't know what the answer is, but the media is our worst enemy.
Everybody I talk to that voted for Obama, they watch these propaganda machines. And that's over half the people in this country. How's the Republicans ever going? I believe the Republican Party is so afraid of it that they won't do anything.
I think there's elements of the Republican Party that are afraid.
I think John Boehner himself is all
afraid.
Oh,
John has to go. Trey Gowdy. If I may, and again, I've already taken too much time, but I was talking to my wife about this, about saying something tonight and forgot to. You know, my anger these days isn't all at Obama, as it could be. It's not. My anger is at every last person that voted for him. When I see an Obama sticker go by in a car, I've never had anger like that in my life. I want to run him off the road. I don't care if it's a woman. I hold my horn and make her see gesture. I'm not kidding. My anger is overwhelming at the people who vote for Obama because I think they just plain have no idea what he is or what's happening to their country. And they're the something for nothing people.
Colonel, if I may, I'd just like to have a comment. First of all, I'd like to say simplify. I'd like to comment about that gentleman about the martial law. I was stationed in Quantico in the 60s when Washington, the town D.C., they had some riots in there. And we were on standby. And we were told, 17, 19-year-old young servicemen, right? If that was your mother standing in front of you, you stick that bayonet in her and get her to move. We were told that at that time. I bring up 2 instances in the past. General MacArthur in the 20s, when he was told to get the veterans out of there, all right? My own instance, as I was saying, we were taught that. And I bring up the flood in New Orleans, when the National Guard went in, or the mayor said, disarm the populace. So I believe it's a very possible and scary scenario.
I hear what you're saying, and my only thought about that is that these were military forces directed against a specific element or activity or incident or something like that, which I would consider different from just declaring martial law across the United States and calling out the military everywhere. But I have worries that some units out there, some 2-star general who really wants to be a 3-star, would say, gentlemen, we're all mounting up and we're going to Los Angeles today.
I'd like to bring up, yeah, with Obama getting rid of all of them generals.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Some of those people deserve to go. I'm not a big
Well,
fan of a lot of those
that
generals.
may be
But
true,
he
but he's
bounced
got
some
all
good guys
these
out of there.
people.
Yeah, he bounced, no question. Obama bounced generals out of there because they didn't kowtow to him.
How many pink slips did he give out last week? How many pink slips did he give out last week?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. But in this administration, in this Pentagon, if you don't bow to the president, you're on your way out. I've got a good friend who's general officer in the Pentagon. He says, in the old days, we could stand around the water cooler and complain a little bit about this, complain a little bit about that. He said, no more. You're heard around the water cooler saying anything, pack your bags. You're on the way out. Yes, sir.
One more question, Colonel, if you don't mind. Benghazi, what happened and what should have happened, and will it really matter?
I think Benghazi's, there's going to continue to be investigated. My own take on Benghazi, and I'm with a bunch of guys who've been following Benghazi very closely. It's almost too complicated to follow anymore. My own take on Benghazi is this.